once again. Good evening, folks, and a Happy New Year, I guess is the first thing I should say. I hope everybody had a Happy New Year, and welcome to Friday Night Tech Talk. Our first one of the year, of course. Last week we were very blessed to have Mike and Will and Ted, all four of us were here together, which is very, very rare. So, Eleanor is in here. She said, "Hi, everyone. Hope everyone had a very happy New Year's Eve, and I wish you all a very happy, prosperous, and of course, blessed 2026. I'll second that. So, nobody else is in as yet, as far as I know. Oh, and I haven't heard from Michael, Will, or Ted. I'm not expecting Michael will, at least I don't think I am. Always happy if I do. I probably should check on our, to see if anything from Ted. No, nothing from Ted either. So, but you know Ted, he likes to pop in. Of course, always a better show if he does. If you're new here, we do this every Friday night, same time. I pick some articles that I think are interesting to other tech nerds like myself. And if there's a big event that week, of course, I find an article about that and we talk about it in the comments. And if there's no big event, I just try to find some interesting articles that you probably haven't heard everywhere else. So this week, as far as I know, there's no big event. Next week, CES starts. It officially starts Tuesday, but of course, usually a day or two before that, Samsung and or Apple and or whoever else might have their own little event. But officially, CES in Vegas starts Tuesday, and that is the biggest event of the year in Vegas. So maybe next week we'll have some CES stuff to talk about, but nothing special this week that I know about. If, like I said, if you're new here, please type something in the comments, say hello. And of course, you'll find me simulcast on Facebook at the same time, either on Mobile Geezer or under George Hayes. So you can go to YouTube or Facebook and keep up with everything. Now, up here in the corner, if you follow that QR code, that'll take you straight to my website for tonight's show notes. And while we're talking show notes, I will show you tonight's show notes. I'm going to share screen. You're going to take a look at my website. Okay. So if you go to mobilegeezer.wordpress.com, click on today's date, you'll get just the show notes for tonight's show. So as I do every week, I will give you a little preview. And Ellen is here. Glad you're here. Hope you had a blessed and happy New Year also. All right. Weekly preview. Like I said, no big events that I'm aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong, of course. I thought I heard. Okay. I thought I heard maybe Ted popping in, but no, I think it was just my old ears. Okay, so we have a Coinbase ransomware arrest on Mashable, and I just think, the Coinbase Bitcoin stuff, it's always interesting to know what illegal stuff people are doing, so I'm glad they have an arrest. So I found it on Mashable. I think it actually happened back in June, we'll see in the article, but they actually arrested some people, so that's a good start to the year. And I have another one following it with Bitcoin. Cybersecurity employees align with the bad guys. They got caught, though. And it's the same thing in both cases. You'll see what I mean. This one is on The Verge. Following that, of course, I brought up CES, and I found this interesting story. This is a long one. I said the Fab Four gadget that changed the future via CES. And he goes all the way back to the 70s and comes up with 4 big-time gadgets. And it's a pretty good article on CNET. Following that, this one again, I just found it interesting. Since we ended the year, I said 2025, another year of Elon predictions getting ahead of reality. And I'm being kind in the way I'm saying it. I found that story on Mashable because Elon's getting more and more of a reputation for just saying things that just don't happen to come out to be true. So we'll take a look at that. And I'm a big Elon admirer, but the guy has a problem with telling the truth sometimes. At least where his money's affected, I'll say that much. And then this is a story I wanted to do last week because last week when Mike and Will and Ted were here, we just talked about tech and phones and stuff, but I got to one story from last week. But this story I wanted to get in because I think it's kind of important. New York State requires warning labels on social media for teens. That was on Tom's Guide. And I think it's kind of important because they're actually passing laws with warning labels, as opposed to the other story that I did its own video about Australia just cutting teens off from social media entirely, which I disagreed with. So I think this is not a bad idea at all. So we'll take a look at that. And finally, and Will had pointed this out to me on Telegram the other day, I just said, say goodbye to Stadia. It's on Phone Arena. And of course, me being me, as soon as I typed that, my mind went, say goodbye to Stadia. Say goodbye, my baby. And if you don't know who that is, that's an old Billy Joel song called Say Goodbye to Hollywood. Anyway, my former singer's mind always comes up with something. So those are the 6 stories that I came up with this week. And if Ted happens to pop in, I will let you guys know. And of course, if Will or Mike by some miracle comes in here, I'll certainly let you know also. But nothing else new, so we will go on with the stories. So I'm going to start with Coinbase ransomware arrest on Mashable. An arrest has been made in the Coinbase ransomware breach. The Coinbase breach affected nearly 70,000 users of the cryptocurrency exchange. So and this was December 30th. So let's drop it into Reader View. Get rid of these ads. It was written by Christiana Silva, a former Coinbase customer service agent, see, the people working for these people, in India who allegedly helped hackers steal sensitive customer information from its database, was arrested in India. And because everything is so worldwide now, I don't think it matters much what country. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong said in a post on X on December 26 that more arrests are to come. We have zero tolerance for bad behavior and will continue to work with law enforcement to bring bad actors to justice, Armstrong posted. Thanks to the Hyderabad police in India, an ex-Coinbase customer service agent was just arrested, another one down, and more still to come. These people ought to be more careful about vetting the people they hire because it's the people working in these places that are now helping the crooks. Same thing in the next story, which you'll see. Okay. There was a tweet that I think if we come out, we can actually see the tweet. Yeah, there's the tweet. From Brian Armstrong, who we just mentioned. We have zero tolerance for behavior. So the tweet was the same as the thing I just told you guys about. So that's okay. Okay. These support agents allegedly gave access to hackers as a part of a May 2025 incident in which hackers demanded a $20 million ransom in exchange for not publicly leaking stolen customer data, according to Bleeping Computer. As Mashable reported at the time, Coinbase and the hackers obtained names, addresses, and phone numbers, email addresses, mass bank account numbers, photos of government IDs, and the last four digits of customers' social security numbers. That's a lot of data, but hopefully they couldn't do much with just the last four numbers of their social, I hope. On top of that, the hackers also accessed account data, including balance snapshots and transaction history. Despite this, Coinbase refused to pay the $20 million ransom, instead offering a $20 million reward fund for anyone providing information on the people responsible for the breach. Good for them. At this time, it's not clear if the reward fund played a role in the recent arrest in India, so it may have, we don't know. At Coinbase, we work directly with law enforcement using blockchain tracing and other tools to help identify offenders and support prosecutions, and we will not stop, a Coinbase spokesperson told Bleeping Computer. So I just thought the fact that they caught somebody who's working in one of these places is a very good thing. So that's that story. And here's Ted with his Happy New Year. If I know you, you're out and about somewhere in Dallas, but if you can, if you get home and join us, that would be great too. But I hope you had a great New Year, sir. So, that's one story. That was Coinbase. Now we're going to go on to Bitcoin. Cybersecurity employees, again, working there, aligned with the bad guys, caught, that's the way I put it. This was on The Verge. And The Verge tends to make me go into reader mode quickly, otherwise they start advertising. So, two cybersecurity employees plead guilty to carrying out ransomware attacks. The pair targeted several companies with ALPHV/Black Hat ransomware, that's a group responsible for this stuff, and extorted $1.2 million in Bitcoin. Written by Emma Roth, again, December 30th. So let's drop it into reader view and see if we can keep it. Oh, wait a minute. Let me, if I say no thanks, see, it tries to get you to sign up. But I think in reader view, it doesn't do that. Two former employees at cybersecurity firms, one of whom was a ransomware negotiator, nice, right, have pleaded guilty to carrying out a series of ransomware attacks in 2023. The Department of Justice announced the guilty pleas on Tuesday, saying 40-year-old Ryan Goldberg and 36-year-old Kevin Martin extorted $1.2 million in Bitcoin from a medical device company and targeted several others. Goldberg, Martin, and an unnamed co-conspirator were indicted for the attacks in October, which involved using ALHV/Black Hat ransomware to encrypt and steal data from their victims. As reported by the Chicago Sun-Times, Martin and the third conspirator worked as ransomware negotiators at Digital Mint, a cybercrime and incident response company. Why did they hire these people? While Goldberg was an incident response manager at Cygnus Cybersecurity Services. So I guess they're not vetting these people very well. ALPHV/Black Hat is a hacker group that uses a ransomware as a service model, with the developers who maintain the malware often taking a cut of stolen funds from cyber criminals who use it to target victims. So in other words, they sell this stuff to the criminals and they all make money off of it. In 2023, the FBI developed a decryption tool designed to recover data from victims of ALPHV Black Cat, which has been linked to high-profile attacks on companies like Bandai Namco, don't know them, MGM Resorts, Reddit, and United Health Group. So they're pretty active. So it's good that they are able to recover data from them. The DOJ's indictment claims Goldberg, Martin, and the co-conspirator used the ransomware in an attempt to extort millions of dollars from victims throughout the U.S., including a pharmaceutical company, a doctor's office, an engineering company, and a drone manufacturer. They don't care who they go after, obviously. These defendants used their sophisticated cybersecurity training and experience to commit ransomware attacks. Yeah, they would be the ones who would know how to do that. The very type of crime that they should have been working to stop, Assistant Attorney General A. Tyson Duva of the DOJ's Criminal Division says in a statement. So I hope because of that, they get the book thrown at them. The Department of Justice is committed to using all tools available to identify and arrest perpetrators of ransomware attacks wherever we have jurisdiction. Goldberg and Martin pleaded guilty to one count of conspiracy to obstruct, delay, or affect commerce on the movement of any article or commodity in commerce by extortion. Their sentencing is scheduled for March 12, 2026, where they'll face up to 20 years in prison, and I hope they get every bit of it. Okay. So those are our two stories about crypto. Now, CES, as I said, since it starts officially Tuesday, I just thought this would be a good story to go through. It's kind of a long story. I may cut it short. We'll see. I said the Fab four gadgets that change the future via CES. Got this on CNET. Okay. Back to the tech future, the history of CES in 4 iconic gadgets. So we're going back to the beginning of CES. The TV, VCR, game console, and iPhone have rich beginnings and enduring legacies at the world's biggest tech show by David Katzmaier. And it's from day before yesterday. Let's jump into review. Like I said, if it starts to seem too long to me, I'll cut it short. And here's Annie. Happy New Year, Annie. Glad you're here. Hey, of course she's off to work. She's always faithful to let us know, and she always goes back on Saturday and checks out the show and even spreads it around on X. So, history of CES and 4 iconic gadgets. Okay. I can't forget the biggest TV I've ever seen. Deep inside a convention center in Las Vegas, and there's lots of them, a PR representative for Samsung calmly ushered me past workers setting up for the evening event. They were preparing for Samsung's first look, the annual unveiling of the company's most ambitious home entertainment hardware for the coming year. And like I said, Samsung usually has their big event maybe a day or two before the official start. Hundreds of journalists and industry insiders would soon have access, but I was getting a behind-the-scenes preview. And the reason I know about this, in case you guys don't know, I was at CES in 2017 and 2018, and Ted was there with me in 2018. So that's where we met, actually. We moved past kiosks in mid-construction devoted to PC monitors, smart TV features, and wacky displays built into modernist bookshelf. I brushed past the Cero, a TV that could rotate its screen into portrait mode. I remember seeing that somewhere last year in last year's stories. Then behind the half-constructed stage, I saw it, the wall, 292 inches of micro LED glory, brighter than any movie screen and so much larger than life. That's big. That was at CES, the world's largest tech event in 2020. Every year, so this would have been just before the we hit with the all the COVID stuff. Every year, Samsung is one of the show's most important exhibitors of consumer electronics, and I knew that its huge TV would be the talk of my industry. As it towered over me, I felt like I was part of technology history. I've been attending CES for most of my adult life, with the exception of 2 years during the COVID pandemic, so obviously that would have been 21 and 22. I've gone every year since 1999. I fly to Vegas in January right after the holidays to hustle for a solid week. And everybody there makes everybody else sick. That's what happens to all of us when we go there for some reason. There, alongside hundreds of other journalists and my CNET colleagues, I write articles and shoot videos about the coolest gadgets on the planet. Tough gig, I know. CNET has a long history at CES. Teaming up with the Consumer Technology Association, which hosts the show, we bestowed the official Best of CES award on a handful of select products. We're doing it again in 2026, this time in conjunction with our colleagues at PC Mag, ZDNet, Mashable, and other Ziff Davis publications, because they all belong to Ziff Davis. The massive show is scheduled for the week of January 5th. Like I said, it officially starts Tuesday. The 5th is Monday. And we've spent months planning how to tackle it. Huge TVs remain one of the most recognizable symbols of CES. That's always true. And they've only grown in significance since the introduction of HDTV broadcast in 1998. HDTV was the biggest thing in my lifetime for video. No question about it, says Gary Shapiro, president of the CTA, so he's in charge of the whole event. HDTV fundamentally changed the viewing experience. But there's a lot more to CES than TVs. Over the years, the consumer electronics extravaganza has been where we first got a glimpse of technology that we use every day. Game consoles, cutting-edge phones, even streaming services, as well as more futuristic tech, including humanoid robots, AI-powered laundry machines, and personal electronic aircraft. Yeah, you'll find plenty of that every time you go. CES is where thousands of companies debut their splashiest innovations, and it's one of the most important predictors of the next big tech trend. And even though bellwether companies like Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, and Samsung hype their own events and live streams throughout the year to launch major products, CES has endured. Other major trade shows have come and gone. Comdex, which ran from 1979 to 2003 and was always based in Vegas, showcased the computer technology of the day, competing directly against CES. E3, a massive video game industry event spawned from CES, took place annually from 1995 to 2021. A handful of international technology trade shows, including Mobile World Congress, that's the other real big one of the other three big ones, in Barcelona, IFA in Berlin, that's the other big one, and Computex in Taipei. Yeah, I think for Americans, Computex not that big, but if you're in Asia, I think that's another big deal. Are still going strong, but CES remains king. It's still the biggest. We can see the influence of the show on TVs, VCRs, game consoles, and PDAs. These four devices, each with a rich history at CES, have a tech legacy that continues to push forward. I expect to see a continuation of that evolution at CES 2026, along with other devices, services, and technologies still in their formative stages. The next wave of household robotics, autonomous mobility, AI-assisted healthcare, and salt spoons will exist in a booth or display at this year's show. It might be years before they're affordable, accessible, and useful enough to become part of our lives. That's true. Usually what you find there takes a few years before we actually see them for the public. The road from wild concept to household mainstay is long and fraught with many dead ends, but it often begins at CES. Yes, much of the things you'll find there never even come out for the public. So here we go with the history. CES 1967. In the beginning, there were TVs. The very first CES, at the time it went by its full name, the Consumer Electronics Show, took place in New York City in 1967. I didn't know that till I read this. It attracted 117 exhibitors, which is tiny by today's standards. By comparison, CES 2025 featured more than 4,500 exhibitors and drew 142,465 465,000 attendees, and pre-COVID shows were even larger. The inaugural CES was a spin-off of another technology-focused trade event, the Chicago Music Show, where audio technology showed up in the form of pocket radio. So this is way back. From the start, CES featured TVs. Invented long before the 1960s, that decade saw the adoption of color television broadcasts in the U.S. and the launch of TV satellite. That's true. Back in the 60s, everybody just started getting color TVs. I was there. At the 1967 CES, the most cutting-edge TVs displayed were those with integrated circuits, a technology that combines multiple electronic components into a small chip or microchip. Yeah, microchip was just becoming known. The stuff that eventually would become the guts of every laptop and smartphone. During that show and for decades afterward, most TVs used a cathode ray tube, yes they did, or CRT, which made the screen small and the sets heavy. Boy, were they. When we were kids, my sister and I sat a couple of feet from our tube TV at home watching cartoons, despite our parents' warnings that sitting too close would ruin our eyesight. Parents were always telling us that in those days. No matter the era, the ideal TV is always something bigger. That's true, and that's still true. Something that promises to bring the immersive, magical feel of a movie theater into a home. During my career, I've watched TVs expand and improve year after year with higher resolution, better contrast, more realistic color, and brightness, chasing reality in fidelity and size. A 2025 CNET survey found people do indeed crave huge screens. Nearly half of the respondents said if the money were no object, they would want a TV bigger than 65 inches in their homes. That's amazing. At least to me, I remember when 65-inch TVs came out, and I thought they were huge. Not anymore, I guess. A lot of people ask what size TV should I buy, and I always tell people to buy one size bigger than you think you need. Chris Hamdorf, Executive Vice President at TV maker TCL, told CNET in 2025. As a TV reviewer, I give people the same advice, but there was a time when 65-inch TVs were far from common. That's true. And that wasn't that long ago either. During the 80s and 90s, larger screen televisions hit the market using a technology similar to movie projectors. Called rear projection TVs, the projector was housed inside the TV cabinet and created an image from behind the screen. I remember them. Then they also used CRTs and in later iterations an acronym-heavy array of other technologies, think DLP, LCD, LCOS. Numerous rear protection TVs defined my first few years covering CES before they were replaced by flat panel technology, often thin and light enough to hang on a wall, a harbinger of the screens we use today for our Netflix binge watching. Let's see, Ted said, how big should your TV be? The door frame is the limit. That's probably true. But people will always find a way to bend it enough to get it in there without breaking it, hopefully. So, but that's good thinking. Plasma technology arrived in 1995 with the world's first large 42-inch. That used to be large, believe it or not. Plasma display by Fujitsu, and at CES 1997, Philips showcased the first commercially available version. The technology evolved in succeeding years but remained expensive by today's standards. Yeah, they were very expensive then. In 2005, Toshiba sold a 42-inch plasma for $4,500, for example. Yeah, that was now, yeah, a couple of hundred and you got it for 42, or even less maybe. Just a few years later, plasma hit mainstream pricing and became very recommendable. That's true. In 2010, the Best of CES award went to the first plasma TV with 3D capability. They tried to make that a big deal. That didn't work out, though. The Panasonic V10, chosen by a group of CNET journalists, including myself. We met in CNET's double-wide trailer in the conference center parking lot and debated our way to the best overall winner. I touted the superb picture quality of previous Panasonic plasmas I'd reviewed, along with a promising new 3D video complete with glasses. Oops, within a few years, that ComStat was a walking corpse. Yeah, that didn't make it. And I commented on its death in 2017. LCD-based displays were evolving at the same time, and that technology soon outsold both plasma and other non-flat technologies. With the advent of 4K resolution, plasma technology became less popular and eventually left the market altogether by 2014. I didn't realize it was that early that they were gone. LCD has been the dominant TV technology ever since. Nowadays, CES is awash in massive screens, although none are quite as large as the 292-inch micro LED TV that impressed me so much. That was the one he was looking at the beginning. At CES 2024, I was particularly enamored by the 132-inch, $200,000 folding TV by Seaseed. LG's booth is another impressive example with its incredible OLED multi-screen displays. I remember even back in 2018, LG had extremely beautiful multi-screen displays in their booth. But innovation in TVs has certainly slowed down as larger TVs with excellent image quality have become increasingly affordable over the years. To be honest with you, the importance of TV at CES is definitely diminished, CTA Shapiro says, because it is such an amazing consumer product that it's almost cheaper than wallpaper. Now, yeah, they have gotten cheap. Thank goodness for the rest of us. Pardon me. CES 1970, so we moved up a few years. A $13,000 VCR sets the stage for cheap streaming. For as long as TVs have existed, they have seemingly delivered the same basic concept, a screen with moving video and sound that you watch for entertainment at home. Other groundbreaking technology ideas, however, have evolved significantly over a short period of time. In 1970, just 3 years into the history of CES, Philips showcased the N1500 VCR. It would be the first device that recorded TV shows onto cassette tapes. Originally a piece of professional broadcast equipment, it hit the UK market in 1972, where it sold for £600, the equivalent of $13,000 today. It had a built-in TV tuner to record television programs broadcast over the air, as well as an analog clock that automatically initiated recordings. The VCR was important on so many different levels, Shapiro tells me. It changed the concept of TV. It empowered consumers to choose what they want to watch and when they want to watch it. Yeah, up until then, you didn't get to choose your time. The idea that you could time shift to watch a show at a later time was revolutionary, that's true, eventually transforming home entertainment forever. Until then, television programming had set broadcast times. To experience appointment TV, you had to follow a show's schedule at the moment it aired. Yeah, that was the only way you were going to see it then. With the ability to record and archive video independently, people took more ownership of their entertainment. Quick sip of my green tea. The format used by the N1500 was actually called VCR, but it was never successfully marketed in the U.S., opening the door for two other formats. Betamax, I remember that, introduced by Sony, and VHS, developed by JVC. Betamax hit the market in 1975, the year I was born, so he's a lot younger than me, and was seen by many as technically superior to VHS. Yeah, everybody knew Betamax was better to look at, but it cost more too, with better image quality. My father was a Beta guy and took great pride in his collection of Disney movies recorded off air. VHS launched at CES in 1977. It used a larger cassette tape than Beta, that's true, and promised longer recording times, 2 hours versus 1 hour. Over the next few years, the two incompatible formats and their devices, both now called VCRs, battled it out in the market. I remember that. One upping each other in marketing, brand support, and technological innovation, such as recording lengths. There was a format war going on between VHS and Beta, Shapiro says, and it was intense. Yes, it was. Uh, it was said Betamax. I had the OGO, the original Super Bowl Shuffle, recorded on a Betamax, 1985 maybe. Great memory. Yeah, I almost got a Betamax in a couple, but the VHS being cheaper, I just ended up going with those all the time. Let's see. Over time, Betamax sales declined as more households adopted VHS. By 1988, 170 million VCRs had been sold worldwide, with only 13% being Betamax models. Sony also announced that it would manufacture VHS VCRs. So that's when they killed themselves, I guess. The format war was effectively over. The VCR had a 40-year reign characterized by blockbuster video rental stores and their reminders to be kind, rewind. But the technology of home video was about to get a digital makeover. The DVD format delivered superior image quality in a smaller, more durable disc that didn't require rewinding. It also allowed recording via DVD-R disc. Around the same time, a disc-free device made its debut, the DVR. That's true. It proved much more popular than DVD-R for recording TV shows and movies. Yeah, but DVDs is what made Netflix famous in the first place. TiVo and Replay TV were among the first DVR devices that stored hundreds of hours of TV shows and enabled automatic recording to a hard disk. With the DVR, the work of programming recordings was much easier. You could simply indicate that you wanted to record every new episode of The Simpsons, and the DVR would do it automatically. There were no discs to bother with, so you didn't have to worry about damaging them. DVRs also allowed you to fast forward through commercials and skip ahead in 15 or 30-second increments. Some even included the ability to skip past commercials automatically without having to press a button at all. One of those DVRs, the Dish Network Hopper, debuted at CES and was named the 2013 Best of CES winner by CNET. Until it wasn't. The company that owned CNET at the time, CBS, was in the process of suing Dish over its commercial skipping capabilities. I remember when they sued them. CBS intervened in the awards process and instructed CNET's editorial staff to select an alternate winner instead. So they weren't allowing their employees to pick that. When I heard that CNET gave an award and CBS reversed it, that must have been devastating to the staff, Shapiro tells me. Then I realized this is like a gift. This is going to get more publicity than ever. He wrote a column for USA Today headline, CBS orders crush CNET. CBS orders crush CNET credibility. The reversal sparked a controversy that CNET veterans like me remember as an example of corporate interests overstepping the editorial integrity. Well, now I think that's pretty common. DVRs remain a staple in the U.S. households today, typically sold by cable TV companies. But as more Americans ditch their cable subscriptions and replace them with streaming services, DVRs have moved to the cloud. The first live TV streaming service, Sling TV, debuted at CES 2015 with a $20 package that included channels such as ESPN, CNN, TNT, and Disney Channel. I said at the time that it stole the show and presaged a new era of cutting the cable TV cord. That's true. Today, Sling and its rivals, YouTube TV, Hulu Plus, Live TV, and more, All offer cloud DVRs. Yeah, I use YouTube TV. They let you record TV shows automatically and watch them whenever and wherever, and even let you fast forward through commercials. But you'll have to press a button to do so. Beyond TV shows and movies, another kind of entertainment shares a rich history of CES debuts. It got its start on television at home, but has moved rapidly into portable formats and even virtual reality. I'm talking about video games. CES 1977, so forward again in history. The Atari 2600 is whatever happened to Pong. I love Pong. I even have a downloaded Pong that I play to this day. Debuting at CES on June 4th, 1977, the iconic Atari 2600 console, yeah, that was top of the line, and then launched the home video game industry. The announcement of the console was a bit of a surprise. Attendees at the show expected the big news to involve the debut of the VHS format. The 2600 isn't the first home console, a distinction that belongs to the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972. I didn't know that. But Atari's was the first to go mainstream. Atari was founded in 1972, and its breakthrough game, Pong, is widely considered the earliest successful video game. Originating as a stand-up arcade game, that's right, it started in arcades. Pong then made its way to home consoles, including the Home Pong, a TV-connected console that was introduced at CES in 1974. Ellie says, Pong, fave to this day. Yeah, I keep one downloaded on my computer just so I can play it every once in a while. Highlights for noobs, looking back on 40 years of gaming. Atari employees included Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. That I did not know, who soon went on to found Apple. So before that, they both worked there. Incredible. In 1974, they had teamed up to develop another seminal game, Breakout. Atari was sold to Warner Communications in 1976 for $28 million. In those days, that was pretty good money. To fund the development of a device codenamed VCS, Video Computer System, which was eventually renamed the Atari 2600. Video games were new at the time and playable on dedicated arcade machines. Much like the VCR, a home game console was a TV accessory that opened up another world without requiring you to leave the house, allowing users to interact with the screen and control the contents as well as compete against another player was groundbreaking. Yeah, I used the Commodore 64 and wore mine out with games. Gaming has since evolved to encompass numerous other systems and platforms, extending beyond the confines of TVs to include computers, phones, VR headsets, and more. It's everywhere and more popular than ever, and CES has played right along. We were very important to the game industry. We had Nintendo and Sony and Sega, he says, adding, I remember the guy from Atari was on board. The 2600 was a big hit, that's for sure, outselling its initial production run in 1977 and eventually selling 30 million units worldwide. My uncle and aunt bought it for the family one Christmas, and I vividly recall hours spent with my younger cousins and the adults as we sat mesmerized. I can remember those days. Kicking butts in Defender, Combat, and Space Invaders. Another game I love, Space Invaders. I think a lot of people did. Safe to say that I was hooked on gaming along with millions of other people. Atari is still around today and even released the throwback Atari 2600 Plus a couple of years ago, but other companies and devices have dominated gaming since the early 1980s. In '85, Nintendo unveiled the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System, at the June CES. I bought the console with my paper route money and hid it from my father, who didn't approve of video games. Made me wonder, how long was he able to hide it from his father? He didn't mention that. Nintendo is regarded as one of the most influential game devices ever. Yeah, It featured add-ons like the Zapper light gun and launched Nintendo's best-known franchises included Mario, Metroid, and Zelda. Yep. Numerous TV-based and handheld successes followed, culminating in the Nintendo Switch, which I have now. The first hit console to combine both at-home and portable gaming into a single device. If only I had the time to play it more. CES always felt a little off-timed for gaming compared to E3's late spring gaming reveals, but it's still been a place where new gaming tech has pushed the envelope, says CNET editor-at-large Scott Stein, who's been attending CES shows since 2004. The Razer Edge gaming tablet gave a preview of where the Switch was later heading all the way back in 2013. Another modern game also got its start in CES. In 2001, Bill Gates, CEO of Microsoft, revealed the first design of the computer company's first foray into gaming console, and the first major console produced by an American company since Atari. It was called the Xbox. In a memorably over-the-top CES keynote address, Gates took to the stage with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, didn't know that, then a professional wrestler, that's right, he wasn't acting then, to hype up the device. Gates pulled aside a black cloth with the words, "For the first time, let me unveil Xbox." The striking black monolith with neon green lights had a big X embossed on top and a massive wired controller. Microsoft aimed to compete with Sony's successful PlayStation console and added similar features to the Xbox, including a broadband connection and the ability to play CD-ROMs and DVD movies. The Xbox was the first console with a hard disk drive, which presaged modern gaming consoles. Versions of the current PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S lack disk drives altogether and rely on games downloaded to the hard disk. That's true. The Xbox was also massively successful, in part because of the popularity of one of its launch titles, Halo Combat Evolved, but it never matched the popularity of its direct competitor, Sony's PlayStation 2. The Xbox versus PlayStation rivalry continues to this day, with Microsoft and Sony trading exclusive titles, buying game studios, and matching one another spec for spec. The original Xbox was the last major console announcement at CES. The show's relevance for gaming was eclipsed by E3, that makes sense, a competing convention in Los Angeles that attracted game developers and other hardware makers. Now you hear about E3 every year. That's definitely one of my biggest career failures when we lost that segment, Shapiro says, when I ask about gaming. We made some bad decisions and they created E3, which has gone through a life cycle of its own. Nonetheless, CES has remained an important venue for gaming hardware debuts. PC makers, chip makers like NVIDIA and VR and AR companies, including Oculus, now folded into Meta, still debut products in Vegas. Meanwhile, big gaming companies launching consoles have opted to dribble news and rumors out over months, culminating in dedicated events like the PS5 Showcase in 2020 and Nintendo Direct for the Switch 2 earlier this year. That was a big deal earlier. The move toward launching important tech products like separate company-specific events has certainly diminished the importance of CES over the years. No company illustrates that trend more than Apple. Illustrate two at a time. Okay. Okay, now we're moving forward again. CES 1992. Apple drops Newton. I don't even remember that. A failed precursor to the iPhone. Now keep in mind, that's when Jobs was not there. Much like its on-again, off-again relationship with gaming companies, CES isn't really a phone show today. That title belongs to the Mobile World Congress, very true. Yet even the MWC plays second fiddle to the individual phone launches put on by big mobile companies Samsung Unpacked, Google Pixel event, and most importantly, the Apple iPhone event. That's where prospective phone buyers and tech journalists gather to get all the details about the year's newest mobile gear. In 1992, 15 years before Steve Jobs announced the iPhone at Apple's press event, the company attended its first CES. Apple's CEO at the time was John Sculley, and the device he unveiled was called the Newton Message Pad. I don't remember that at all. Sculley hailed it as nothing less than a revolution, and it marked the computer company's first new product line since the introduction of the Macintosh. The Newton was incredibly ambitious at that time, and it's not difficult to see a straight evolutionary line from the message pad to the iPhone. Okay, so it was a precursor, I guess. Apple called it a PDA, well, everybody did back then, for Personal Digital Assistant. The Newton was a handheld and portable device dominated by a large screen. Now, keep in mind, the phones we had in those days were gigantic by comparison, so that probably was considered small, and was designed to help users take notes, organize contacts, calendars, and more. It allowed people to read ebooks more than a decade before Amazon launched the Kindle. A Newton advertised boasted send faxes without paper and receive pager messages and email. Ultimately, however, the Newton was a market failure. Its chief feature was handwriting recognition. The device could convert words written on the screen with an included stylus into text. That feature didn't work well, often failing to accurately convert even simple words to text, and was famously skewered by the Doonesbury comic strip. Wow. For a glorified notepad, the Newton itself was way too expensive, starting at $700. That's true. When it hit the market in '92, that was a lot of money back then, which would be more than $1,500 today. Other PDAs at the time included the IBM Simon and the Nokia 9000. I remember the Nokia 9000, both of which featured early cellular phone functionality. Devices like BlackBerry and handhelds running tiny mobile versions of Microsoft Windows also appeared around the mid-1990s. But early smartphones, basically PDAs with cellular technology built in, that's what they all were, quickly overcame them. One of the most buzzworthy products of CES 2009 was the Palm Pre. Yeah, that was a big deal. A smartphone using the company's brand new WebOS mobile software. The Pre won CNET's Best in Show and the People's Voice Award, cementing its place in CES history. All right, I'm not going to read all the rest of this. Let's jump down a little bit. CES 2026. What's next for tech history? If there's any lesson I've learned from CES after all these years covering the show, it's that flashy tech ideas take longer than you might expect to become a part of our everyday lives, if they do at all. That's very true. In each of the cases above, the devices that were first introduced did not immediately revolutionize the market all by themselves. It took years and intense competition to figure out a winner. And they're not the only examples. I didn't mention camcorders, CDs, Windows Media Center, Blu-ray versus HD DVD, SAC-D versus DVD Auto, 4G, smartwatches, or Impossible Pork. I don't know Impossible Pork. The 2026 edition of CES is about to kick off in Vegas for the show's 59th year. As tech giants hold their own events and innovations shift increasingly from the world of physical hardware to digital software, the decades-old question arises, does CES even matter anymore? If you ask the 150,000 people expected to attend this year, the answer is beside the point. CES is here steeped in history, and it's sure to be packed with futuristic, ambitious, and weird new technologies. It's almost certainly going to be around next year, too. So I say pass the impossible lobster and put me to the flying robot AI cars. So, very good article. I said it was kind of long, but it was interesting going through all that history. So I just thought it was pretty cool. All right. One more swig of my green tea. And we continue on. All right, I just thought this was kind of a fascinating story for the end of the year. 2025, another year of Elon's predictions getting ahead of reality. This is on Mashable. And I said I was being nice in the way I put it, which you'll see. Here's everything Elon Musk promised in 2025 and failed to deliver. Musk is now infamous for his false promises. That's true. I think the saga of Cybertruck proved that. But even this is excessive. This is from December 30th. Let's drop into really. Oh, it's written by Matt Binder. Now, when we get to the end, you'll see this guy really doesn't like Elon. Like I said, I'm kind of an Elon fanboy, but yeah, he does do a lot of stretching the truth, and that's putting it mildly. By now, everyone knows that Elon Musk is very much an optimist when it comes to making predictions. Yeah, that's the nice way to put it. That's very true. To be blunt, Musk is a BS artist. He makes promises he can't keep. That's very, very true. For example, everyone now is likely very familiar with his infamous 2011 interview with the Wall Street Journal where he said he'd put a man on Mars in 10 years. That was 14 years ago now, and we're nowhere near putting anyone on Mars. Years ago, Musk also touted his proposed Hyperloop train system as a way to quickly transport people between cities. That's true. That never came to fruition and was likely a ruse to stop other transit projects. With 2025 nearly over, keep in mind this was 3 days ago, Mashable decided to revisit his predictions related to this year. Time has run out. What did Musk promise for this year that didn't come to fruition? People on Mars by 2025. Yes, I mentioned that 2011 Wall Street Journal interview where Musk promised to put a man on Mars in 10 years. However, this one is a completely separate promise from Musk regarding a man on Mars. Back in 2016, roughly 4 years after his 10-year WSJ claim, Musk made an appearance in Recode's Code 2016 conference. During the conversation with Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberg, Musk pushed back his previous Mars arrival prediction that placed humans on the red planet by 2021. According to Musk, SpaceX would start sending rockets to Mars by 2018, followed by a new Mars mission every 26 months, and then they'd start sending people. If things go according to plan, we should be able to launch people probably in 2024 with arrival in 2025, Musk said, referring to colonists arriving on the planet. Now, here, I don't think he's lying. He's just this extreme optimist, and he's always way too optimistic. Just my take. Nope, 2025 has come and gone, and we're still not on Mars. Tesla robo-taxis would cover half of the U.S. population. Yeah, he really puts himself out there on these. Take a walk outside. How many Tesla robo-taxis do you see? None, you say. And you say you live in Austin, Texas, the only place in the U.S. where robo-taxis are currently operating. That's odd because in July, during Tesla's Q2 quarterly financial report, Musk told investors that Tesla's robo-taxis would be serving half the nation. I believe half the population of the U.S. will be covered by Tesla's robo-taxi by the end of the year. Well, that one didn't come true either. Obviously, that's not true. A new report from the New York Times last week found that even Austin locals rarely, if ever, come across Tesla's robo-taxis. As the EV outlet Electrek pointed out at the time of his claim, it was preposterous for Musk. It was preposterous for Musk to make. Yet he made the claim with a straight face, and investors believe he always does. Believed him. fully driverless Tesla robotaxis. Yeah, he's still talking about this. Speaking of Tesla's robotaxis, if you do come across one, did you know you'll actually find a human safety monitor riding inside? You will, despite what Musk previously promised. Teslas will be in the wild with no one in them in June in Austin, Musk said last year in the 2024 Q4 earnings call. This is not some far off mythical situation. It's 5, 6 months away. Now, this was he was saying at the end of 2024. While Tesla's robotaxi service did arrive in Austin during that timeline, I remember when it started. They weren't with no one in them. The level of autonomy that Tesla performs at requires a human safety monitor to ride inside the vehicle according to Texas regulations. See, Ellie said, Waymo spelled wrong. Yeah, it's W-A-Y-M-O. Driverless are in several California cities, but they are far from it. They are from it. Yeah, they belong to Google. And Waymo has been operating in San Francisco for a long time, and they do ride around with nobody monitoring them. And I gather they are much safer than Teslas. But Musk promised multiple times over the past few months that those human safety monitors would be removed by the end of 2025. Another tweet, but it's the same thing. Musk said in a post on September on X, the safety driver is just there for the first few months to be extra safe. Should be no safety driver by end of the year. But of course, Texas is in control of that, not him. Musk reiterated that schedule during earnings call in October. Yeah, he's always the optimist. We are expecting to have no safety drivers in at least large parts of Austin by the end of this year, so within a few months. Well, that didn't happen. And then Musk repeated that claim in early December during an XAI hackathon. Unsupervised is pretty much solved at this point. So there will be Tesla robotaxis operating in Austin with no one in them. Not even anyone in the passenger seat in about 3 weeks. Well, they blew that. Last week, Musk posted that he had taken a ride in a fully driverless Tesla robotaxi in Austin. Now, do we know if that's true? I don't know. A Tesla employee shared a video from inside a driverless ride as well, so somebody did it. However, these appear to be test runs, as regular customers still report human safety monitors are still part of the ride, at least as of very late December. So none of that came true. XAI would achieve AGI, and of course they all say artificial general intelligence, and nobody in California can even define what it means, because it means something different to all of them. But let's see. I said you had an FNTZ article about the Waymo that went through a police closed zone. Yes, it did. That was 3 weeks ago. But nobody got hurt. It was just passing police action where the police had stopped the car they chased down. But it was an interesting article. Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI, is basically the holy grail for the current AI-obsessed tech industry. AGI can, now get this, can be defined as the type of artificial intelligence that we were promised in sci-fi movies. It's not a large language model that can sound human like existing AI, but AI that can actually perform intellectual tasks just like a human. It can think, learn, reason, and take action. As a developer programmer for 34 years, I don't think that's going to come true. Not only in my lifetime, I don't think it's going to come true in anybody who's listening to this lifetime. That's my prediction. In 2024, matter of fact, I think OpenAI is getting closer and closer to failing, and I think it's going to fail this year. In 2024, in a reply on the social media platform X, Musk said his AI company, XAI, would achieve AGI in 2025. Another tweet that's not there, because that didn't make it either. But this one was in the tweet. I went back and saw it earlier today. How long until AGI, posted Logan Kilpatrick of Google at AI Studio. Next year, Musk replied. Big if true, Kilpatrick responded. Well, surprise, surprise, it wasn't true because that was from last year. According to a new report from Business Insider, Musk has since moved the goalpost and said XAI could achieve AGI in the next few years, don't hold your breath, and potentially even by next year. We'll report back at the end of 2026 unless Musk's version of Skynet is taken over. Like I said, this guy really doesn't like Elon, and you'll see that at the end of this. A flying car demo of the long-awaited Tesla Roadster. This is a combo of two potential promises, as it's still unclear what the heck Musk was actually referring to on Joe Rogan's podcast back in November, so only a month and a half ago. During an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, Musk claimed that Tesla would drop a demo of the long-awaited Roadster. Yeah, people were waiting for that a long time. A vehicle which the company announced and started taking pre-orders for in 2017, long time. The Tesla Roadster has still yet to be released 8 years later. We're getting close to demonstrating the prototype. So if that's just a prototype, they're still years away is my guess. Musk said to Rogan during the show, I think this will be one thing I can guarantee is that this product demo will be unforgettable. Yeah, if you ever get to it. When pressed for a timeline from Rogan, Musk replied, hopefully before the end of the year. Well, that didn't happen. However, Musk went further, recalling how his friend Peter Thiel would say the future was supposed to have flying cars, yet we don't have flying cars. Rogan questioned Musk further, but Musk just said that, this should say Thiel, should be able to buy a flying car and we'd all just have to wait to see the demo. Didn't put a time on that one, though. So was Musk saying that Roadster can fly? Was Musk even being serious about the flying car? Who knows? But 2025 is now over and we don't have a demo of a flying car or a Roadster, so Musk didn't deliver on either. And just before we get into the Doge part, I just went to a video yesterday that Doge did cut billions of dollars, not trillions of dollars, but by the time they paid for everything in the whole process, they ended up spending more than they cut. So just so you know. Doge would cut $2 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse. That's what he said. Following Donald Trump's re-election, Musk was given a chance to head up a new quasi-government agency called Doge, in which he pledged to cut $2 trillion in what he described as waste, fraud, and abuse. Doge quickly became quite controversial as Musk and his very young team, yeah, they were young, struggled to find any real waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. Well, they did find it in the U.S. aid. Much of Doge's claims of fraud were debunked, and the group had a penchant for posting inaccurate data, which put the group in a more favorable light. Musk's promise of $2 trillion in cuts quickly became a promise of $1 trillion in cuts. That $1 trillion promise, that soon was rounded down to the hundreds of billions. Now, new analysis from the New York Times as well as the right-wing Cato Institute found that Doge actually didn't save anything. That's true. Many of the government contacts that Doge claimed to cancel are still active. That's true also. In fact, government spending actually went up on Doge's watch. That's also true. The federal government spent $7.6 trillion in the first 11 months of calendar year 2025, approximately $248 billion higher by November of 2025 compared to the same month in 2024, the Cato Institute's analysis said. And that's a right-wing group saying that. Now, here's where this guy, the hatred comes out, and I disagree with this. While Musk failed to deliver on his Doge promises, the cuts it did actually make to U.S. aid and foreign aid programs have reportedly led to hundreds of thousands of deaths. I don't think that's true. Happy New Year. So, we all know Elon is not very good at keeping his promises. Ask anybody who bought a Cybertruck. So just thought that was a very interesting article. And as an Elon admirer, this guy opens your eyes more the more he opens his mouth. Okay. And this one I just thought was an interesting story, and we're probably going to see more and more of this. New York State requires warning labels on social media for teens. Yeah, and I thought the Australia cutting teens off from social media entirely was not the right thing to do. This, I think, is a pretty good idea. So this was on Tom's Guide a couple of weeks ago. New York introduces social media restrictions for teen accounts. What that means. As written by Scott Yunker, last updated the 23rd. Warning labels will highlight the addictive nature of social design features. Yeah, much like cigarettes. So into reader view we go. The state of New York has become one of the first in the country to require social media sites like Instagram and TikTok to display warning labels about addictive design features when accessed by teens. The labels are required by the new Responsible AI Safety and Education Act, signed into law this weekend by Governor Kathy Hochul. It introduces safety regulations on AI companies and requires disclosures within 72 hours if imminent harm may come from their platforms. I agree with this. For social media platforms, users under 18 will have to be warned about the mental health risks associated with excessive use. It stems from a U.S. Surgeon General advisory, that's how we got the cigarette one back in the 70s, that connected prolonged social media use with conditions like anxiety, depression, and disrupted sleep. And it was the Surgeon General that pushed it onto cigarettes too. So, good idea, I think. Technology companies play a central role and have a fundamental responsibility in designing safe online environments and in preventing, minimizing, and addressing the risks associated with social media, the report reads. Under the law, features like autoplay, infinite scroll, and algorithmically generated feeds must display warning labels to minors. The labels need to appear for at least 10 seconds when a teen user logs on and again for at least 30 seconds after 3 hours of cumulative use. I thought that was pretty good, the 3 hours. And once an hour after that. The law bars companies from hiding the warnings in out-of-way places such as terms of service agreements. Good. So I think they've constructed this law pretty well, in my opinion. It's similar to warning labels situated on alcohol and tobacco products. Companies that fail to adhere could be fined up to $5,000 per incident, with enforcement carried out by the New York State Attorney General's office. When big tobacco was killing thousands of Americans, we stepped in with smart, thoughtful regulations to save lives, Senator Andrew Gennandris, I think, the bill's lead sponsor in the Senate, said in a statement. It's time to do the same with big tech. This is about ensuring the internet is a tool that serves us, not the other way around. Tom's Guide reached out to TikTok and Meta, the parent company behind Instagram, Facebook, and Threads for comment. We will update if the companies respond, which I guess they didn't. How this differs from the Australia ban. New York's warning labels follow Australia's world first social media ban enacted on December 10th. That bars anyone under 16 from having accounts on certain social media platforms, including Instagram, Snapchat, and X. And I did a video about that in particular, and I, kind of disagreed with totally cutting teenagers off, but that's just me. The ban requires the platforms to take responsible steps to ensure children cannot and do not have accounts on their apps. Supporters largely praised the measure for protecting children from harmful content and already having a positive impact on kids with more present children. Detractors claim it introduces cybersecurity risks, most notably via the required age verification checks. The ban is already facing stiff challenges. Reddit launched the challenge in the High Court of Australia. I'll bet you Reddit loses, claiming that it isn't a social media platform. Google and Meta have expressed concerns but appear to be complying. A pair of Australian teens challenged the law in the High Court, saying that it makes the internet less safe and cuts them off from the global community. I think it cuts them off from some learning stuff. Of course, teens are already getting around the ban. The ABC reports that alternative apps have seen a notable rise in popularity since the ban took effect. Meanwhile, there are multiple threads on Reddit about how to get around the ban, mostly by using some of the best VPNs. So I just thought what New York did was a pretty good idea. So, all right, my last story. And like I said, Will pointed this out to me. I just said, "Stay goodbye to Stadia." Found this on Phone Arena. Every time I read that line, my mind goes, "Say goodbye to Hollywood." Can't help it. Okay, time is almost up on your old Stadia controller as Google gets ready to pull the last plug. And that was the end of 2025. So we're past it now. If you miss this deadline, your wireless controller becomes a wired brick forever by Joanna Romero. She does a lot of their good articles. This was published on the 29th. So into reader view. Google is finally shutting down the web tool that allows users to convert their Stadia controllers to Bluetooth mode, marking the definitive end of the service hardware support. If you do not update your device by the deadline, like I said, it was 2 days ago, it will lose the ability to function wirelessly with other platforms forever. The final countdown for Stadia hardware. After a series of generous extensions, it appears time has officially run out for the Google Stadia controller. In a new report that was spotted that the Bluetooth enablement tool, which unlocks standard wireless functionality on the device, is set to shut down permanently on December 31st, 2025. So that's come and gone. This website was the only official method provided by Google to transition the controller from its original Wi-Fi based connection used for the now defunct cloud service, so that doesn't even exist anymore, to a standard Bluetooth low energy connection compatible with PCs, Macs, and Android phones. So you could use it with other things if you did that before the deadline. Originally, this tool was scheduled to sunset at the end of 2023, so they gave it a good 2 years. However, likely due to community outcry and the sheer volume of e-waste that would have resulted, Google extended availability to 2024 and then quietly again through the end of 2025 with just days left in the year. No further extensions have materialized, signaling that this is truly the end of the line. Why preserving this hardware matters. And you can see it's gone now. You might wonder why a discontinued controller for a dead platform is worth the fuss. The reality is that the Stadia controller is actually a fantastic piece of hardware. It features excellent ergonomics, satisfying buttons, and a solid build quality that rivals the official Xbox and PlayStation peripherals often found for a fraction of the price on the second-hand market. More importantly, the landscape for using this controller has improved significantly. Steam recently updated its input support to better recognize the Stadia controller, making it a viable, high-quality option for PC gaming. So if you want to use it on your Steam, you should have done it before this ended. By converting it to Bluetooth mode, you are essentially getting a premium wireless game for pad for free if you already own one, or very cheap. If you fail to perform this update, the controller defaults to a wired-only USB-C device, significantly limiting its utility and likelihood of being used, which ultimately pushes more quality tech into landfills. A final goodbye to a solid device. This is a bittersweet moment. While the Stadia service itself had a rocky execution, yeah, Google didn't do great with that, but they did good with this. The hardware team nailed the controller design. It is comfortable for long sessions and has a distinct personality that stands out in a sea of generic black plastic. Seeing the final and phishing support tool go offline feels like the last door closing on the Stadia experiment. If you have one of these white or orange controllers collecting dust in the drawer, I strongly recommend taking your 5 minutes, well, that time is come and gone. Flash the Bluetooth firmware. We have a helpful post on the steps on how to do that here. So that's come and gone, but I just thought it was a good article since it just ended 2 days ago. So that's all I've got for tonight, folks. And as usual, uh, if you want to say something in the comments or continue a discussion in there, this is the time to do it. Other than that, since nobody else joined, and I know I did some long articles tonight, so we went kind of long with just me. But if there's no further discussion, then I hope everybody has a very blessed weekend, has a wonderful 2026, and let's all remember we all do better when we love each other. So since Mike and Will didn't want me to sing the song last week, I'll skip it for this week. So I hope everybody has a blessed week, and see you next week. You have a good one too, Ted. Glad you at least got in the comments. Good night, all.